The snow was falling hard that Christmas Eve night in Boston, covering everything in white, like the city was trying to hide its problems under a clean blanket. Michael Chen stood at the window of his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the empty streets below. It was almost midnight, and everyone had gone home to their families. Everyone except him. The building was dark except for his office light and the security lights in the parking garage. He was 32 years old, owned a technology company worth $800 million, and had nobody waiting for him at home. His penthouse apartment would be just as cold and empty as this office, so he stayed, pretending to work on reports that could wait until after the holidays. That's when he saw something move near the dumpsters behind the building. At first, Michael thought it was just a stray dog or maybe a homeless person looking for shelter from the storm. But then the security light caught them clearly, and his breath stuck in his throat. It was a woman in a thin coat, her dark hair covered in snowflakes, digging through the large trash container with desperate movements. What made his heart stop completely was seeing two small children standing nearby, holding hands, their faces pressed together for warmth. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and they were watching their mother search through garbage on Christmas Eve, while other children were safe in warm beds, dreaming about Santa Claus. Michael knew this woman. Her name was Rosa Martinez, and she cleaned his office every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. She always worked quietly, never complained, never asked for anything extra, even when he left extra work for the cleaning staff during busy seasons. He had seen her name tag 100 times, but had never really looked at her face, never wondered why she looked so tired, never asked about her life outside these walls. Now, he was watching her pull out a bag from the dumpster, checking inside for something, and his stomach turned. The office had ordered too much food for the Christmas party that afternoon, and he remembered his assistant saying they had thrown away dozens of untouched sandwiches and salads because they couldn't donate them so late in the day. Rosa found what she was looking for and carefully placed several wrapped sandwiches into a plastic bag she had brought. Her movements were practiced, like she had done this before, many times before. The children, a boy and a girl who looked like twins, stood perfectly still in the falling snow. They didn't cry or complain, just waited with the patience of children who had learned too young that life was hard and crying didn't change anything. Michael watched Rosa turn to them, saw her kneel in the snow, and pull them close, wrapping her thin coat around all three of them for a moment. Even from 42 floors up, he could see them shaking from the cold. Without thinking, Michael grabbed his coat and ran to the elevator. His mind was racing with shame and anger at himself. How many times had Rosa cleaned his office while he worked late, and he had never even said more than a quick hello? How many times had he thrown away half-eaten meals without thinking about who might need them? The elevator seemed to take forever, and when it finally reached the ground floor, he burst through the security doors and into the freezing night. Rosa looked up in terror when she heard footsteps, clutching her children behind her. The bag of food hidden behind her back, like evidence of a crime. "Mr. Chen," she gasped, her face going pale under the harsh security lights. "I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't be here. I wasn't stealing. These were thrown away. I checked. They were in the garbage already. Please don't fire me. Please. It's Christmas, and my children haven't eaten since yesterday morning." The words tumbled out of her mouth in a desperate rush, and Michael felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He looked at the twins, saw their thin faces and two big eyes, saw how their shoes had holes covered with duct tape, saw how they pressed against their mother not just for warmth but for protection from him. The rich man who could destroy their lives with one word. "When was the last time you had a hot meal?" Michael asked quietly, his voice rough, with emotion he couldn't name. Rosa's eyes filled with tears that froze on her cheeks before they could fall. "The children had soup at school on Friday," she whispered. "That was the last hot food. Our gas was shut off 2 weeks ago, and the food bank was closed for the holidays. I get paid next week, and then we'll be okay. I promise we'll be okay. I just needed something for them for tomorrow, for Christmas morning, so they could have something special. Michael looked at these three people standing in the snow, this family that was invisible to him until tonight, and made a decision that would change everything. Get your children and come with me, he said firmly. Right now, no arguments, you're all coming with me. Rosa started to shake her head, started to say they couldn't, but Michael was already picking up the little boy who was closest to him. The child weighed almost nothing, like a bird, and his small body was ice cold even through his thin jacket. What's your name? Michael asked the boy gently. James, came the whispered answer. And I'm Julia, the little girl said bravely, taking Michael's free hand like she had decided to trust him. They went to Michael's car, a warm BMW that probably cost more than Rosa would make in 5 years. He turned the heat on full blast and heard the children sigh with relief as warmth hit their frozen faces. Where are we going? Rosa asked, holding her children close in the back seat. My apartment, Michael said, already driving. You're going to have a hot meal and sleep in warm beds tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest, but tonight, on Christmas Eve, your children are going to be safe and warm and fed. Rosa started, crying then, silent tears that she tried to hide from James and Julia, but they saw anyway. And Julia said quietly, Don't cry, Mama. The nice man is helping us, like in the Christmas stories where angels come. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He was no angel, just a man who had been blind to the suffering happening right under his nose. His penthouse apartment had 4 bedrooms, 3 of which had never been used. A kitchen full of food he rarely cooked, and heat that never got shut off. He had everything while Rosa had nothing, and she had been cleaning up after him for 2 years without him, ever knowing she was drowning. The security guard at Michael's building didn't even blink when they walked in. He was well trained not to ask questions about Mr. Chen's guests. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet, except for James asking softly if they were going all the way to the clouds. When the doors opened to Michael's apartment, all 3 of them stopped and stared. The space was huge, with windows looking out over the city lights, leather furniture that cost more than most cars, and a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. But it was also cold in a different way, empty and unlived in, like a very expensive hotel room that nobody called home. Are you a prince? Julia asked seriously, looking around with wide eyes. Michael laughed, but it was sad. No, sweetheart, I'm just a man with too much money and nobody to share it with. He opened his refrigerator, which was full of food his housekeeper kept stocked, even though he barely ate at home. What would you like? I have everything, anything you want. The twins looked at their mother for permission, and when she nodded, James said quietly, Could we have mac and cheese? We haven't had mac and cheese in so long. Such a simple request from children who could have asked for anything. Michael found himself fighting tears as he heated up not just mac and cheese, but also chicken, vegetables, bread, and soup. He watched Rosa try to help, but he gently pushed her toward the table. Sit, he said. Rest. Let someone take care of you for once. While the food cooked, he found hot chocolate mix and made 3 cups with extra marshmallows. The twins' faces, when they tasted it, looked like they had been given magic. They ate slowly, carefully, like they were afraid the food might disappear if they went too fast. Rosa ate like she was in a dream, constantly looking around as if she expected to wake up back in the cold. Why are you alone on Christmas Eve? Julia asked Michael as she finished her second helping of mac and cheese. It was an innocent question that hit him harder than any business deal gone wrong. I don't have any family anymore, he said simply. My parents died when I was young, and I never got married or had children. I've been so busy building my company that I forgot to build a life. Rosa looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time, and saw past the expensive suit and the penthouse apartment. She saw a lonely man who had everything except what mattered. We're alone too, James said matter-of-factly. Daddy left when we were babies, and Grandma died last year. It's just us and Mama now. The simple honesty of children, telling the story of abandonment and loss, like it was just another fact of life. Michael learned that Rosa had been married young, had the twins at 22, and her husband had left when the babies were just 6 months old. She had no child support, no help, just whatever she could make cleaning offices at night, while her elderly neighbor watched the twins. When the neighbor had died 6 months ago, Rosa had been bringing the children with her to work, hiding them in the supply closet with coloring books, praying nobody would find out. "They're so quiet," she explained. "They know Mama has to work, so they never make noise, never complain. They're such good children, too good. They shouldn't have to be this good, this young." Her voice broke on the last words, and Michael saw the weight she carried, the guilt of not being able to give her children the childhood they deserved. He thought about all the times he had stayed late at the office, working on deals worth millions, never knowing there were 2 children hidden in a closet down the hall, staying silent so their mother wouldn't lose her job. After dinner, Michael showed them to the guest rooms. The twins had never seen beds so big, bathrooms with actual bathtubs instead of just broken showers, and closets bigger than the bedroom they shared at home. "Can we really sleep here?" James asked, touching the soft comforter like it might break. "It's like a castle bed," Julia added, already climbing up to test the mattress. Rosa stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Chen, this is too much. We can't accept all this. We should go home." "Rosa," Michael said firmly, "your children need this. You need this. It's Christmas Eve, and nobody should be searching through trash for food, while I have empty rooms and full refrigerators. Please, let me do this. Let me help." She nodded, unable to speak, and went to tuck her children into the warm, soft beds they had never dreamed of sleeping in. Michael heard her singing softly to them in Spanish, a lullaby about angels and stars, and his empty apartment finally felt like it had life in it. Later, after the children were asleep, Rosa sat with Michael in his living room, holding a cup of tea like it was precious gold. "I have a college degree," she said suddenly. "Nobody believes that when they see me with my mop and bucket, but I graduated with honors. I was going to be a teacher, had everything planned out. Then I met David, got pregnant, got married, and everything fell apart so fast I couldn't catch my breath. One day I was young with dreams, and the next I was a single mother with 2 babies and no way to pay rent." Michael listened to her story, really listened, not like the half attention he gave to most people. Rosa had applied for teaching positions, but they all required certifications she couldn't afford to get. She had applied for office jobs, but without recent experience, and with 2 young children, nobody would hire her. Cleaning offices was the only job that let her work at night while the twins slept, even if it meant bringing them along and hiding them. She made just enough to pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked, and the landlord threatened eviction every month when she was a day late with payment. "I'm not asking for pity," Rosa said firmly. "I work hard, harder than anyone knows. I just got trapped in a circle where every time I try to climb up, something pulls me back down. The car breaks and takes all my savings. The twins get sick, and I miss work and lose pay. The rent goes up, and suddenly I can't afford food. It never ends, Mr. Chen. The climbing and falling, it never ends." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay in his expensive bed thinking about Rosa and the twins in his guest rooms. The first time anyone had used those rooms since he bought this place 5 years ago. He thought about how many people like Rosa he passed every day, invisible. People who cleaned his office, served his coffee, delivered his packages. How many of them were one paycheck away from disaster? How many had children hiding in closets or going to bed hungry? He had built a company worth hundreds of millions, but what good was it if families were searching through his garbage for food? Christmas morning came with Julia and James jumping on his bed, something no one had ever done before. Mr. Chen, it's Christmas. Santa came. There are presents under your tree. Michael sat up confused, then remembered the tree his assistant had decorated in his living room, the one he had ignored. But there hadn't been any presents under it yesterday. He followed the twins to the living room and found Rosa there, tears in her eyes. She had taken the paper napkins from dinner and fashioned them into little origami angels, placing them around the tree. "It's not much," she said, "but the children made them for you this morning, too, thank you." Michael looked at these paper angels, made from napkins by children who had nothing to give, and felt something break inside him. All the expensive gifts he had received over the years, all the business awards and achievements, none of them meant as much as these simple paper angels. "They're perfect," he said, his voice rough. Then he remembered the gifts in his office, corporate presents he had received but never opened. "Wait here," he said, and returned with an armload of wrapped boxers. "These are for all of you," he said, placing them under the tree. "I know it's not what you might have wanted, but it's something." The twins looked at their mother for permission, then carefully opened the gifts. There were electronics Michael didn't need, gift cards to restaurants he never visited, expensive scarves and gloves that had been sitting in his office for weeks. To him they were just corporate gifts, meaningless tokens. To Rosa and the twins, they were treasures. But the best gift came later that morning, when Michael made a phone call to his head of human resources, who owed him several favors for working on Christmas Day. "I need you to create a position," he said, executive assistant to the CEO, starting salary $70,000, full benefits, flexible hours to accommodate school schedules, and immediate daycare assistance for 2 children. He looked at Rosa as he spoke, watched her face change from confusion to shock to something that looked like hope. "The position has been filled by Rosa Martinez, effective immediately." "I don't understand," Rosa whispered when he hung up. "You don't have to clean anymore," Michael said simply. "You have a college degree, and you're smart and hardworking. You'll be my assistant. Help me run my company. The hours will work with the twins' school schedule, and the company will pay for daycare when you need it. You'll have health insurance, paid vacation, sick days, everything." Rosa started sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Julia and James ran to her, hugging her tight, not understanding, but knowing their mother needed them. "Why?" Rosa asked, when she could speak again. "Why would you do this for us?" Michael knelt down to be at level with the twins, but his words were for Rosa too. "Because last night I realized I'd been living in a tower, so high up I couldn't see the real world. I had everything but felt empty. You had nothing but had everything that matters: love, family, strength. You've been invisible to me for 2 years, and that's my failure, not yours. This isn't charity, Rosa. This is me trying to be the man I should have been all along." The change wasn't instant or easy. Rosa had to learn new skills, overcome her fear of not being good enough. The twins had to adjust to after-school programs and not hiding in closets. Michael had to learn to be a friend, a mentor, something more than just a boss. There were people at the company who whispered about the cleaning lady becoming the CEO's assistant, but Michael shut them down quickly. Rosa proved herself within weeks, organizing his chaotic schedule, managing difficult clients with grace, and bringing an understanding of struggle that made the company more human. 3 months later, Rosa and the twins had moved into a decent apartment with working heat and enough bedrooms for everyone. Michael often had dinner with them, teaching James to play chess and helping Julia with her reading. He found himself rushing to finish work so he could spend evenings with this family that had adopted him as much as he had saved them. His empty penthouse became less empty as toys appeared, children's drawings covered his refrigerator, and laughter filled the spaces that had only known silence. 6 months after that Christmas Eve, Michael stood in a school auditorium watching Julia and James in their school play. Rosa stood beside him, no longer the exhausted woman searching through trash, but someone who stood tall, who smiled freely, who had hope in her eyes again. They asked me to write about my hero, Julia had told him that morning, showing him her essay. I wrote about you and Mama. You're both heroes because you saved each other. Michael thought about that as he watched the twins on stage, confident and happy in a way they couldn't have been a year ago. Rosa had saved him just as much as he had saved her. She had shown him that success meant nothing without someone to share it with, that all his money was worthless if it didn't help others. The twins had taught him that joy could come from simple things like bedtime stories and paper angels made from napkins. A year after that Christmas Eve, Michael's company started a program hiring single parents, providing daycare, flexible hours, and living wages. He told Rosa's story at business conferences, challenging other CEOs to look at their invisible workers, to see the hidden struggles happening in their own buildings. Some called him soft, said he was ruining his bottom line, but his company thrived because employees who felt valued worked harder, stayed longer, and brought their whole selves to work. Rosa became more than an assistant. She became Michael's conscience, his advisor, his closest friend. She told him when he was being blind to problems, pushed him to do better, and reminded him that every decision affected real people with real families. The twins called him Uncle Michael, and he attended every school event, every soccer game, every birthday party. His refrigerator was covered in their art, his office full of their photos, his heart full in a way he had never imagined possible. 2 years after that Christmas Eve, at another company Christmas party, Michael stood to give a speech. But instead of talking about profits and projections, he talked about Rosa Martinez, the woman who had been invisible until desperation made her visible. He talked about James and Julia, the children who had taught him that wealth wasn't measured in dollars. He talked about how one moment of seeing, really seeing someone, could change everything. CEO saw a single mother maid with twins searching trash on Christmas Eve. Their lives changed forever, he said, repeating the words that had become legend in their company. But the truth is, my life changed more than theirs. They taught me that success without compassion is failure, that wealth without generosity is poverty, and that family isn't always blood, but sometimes the people who come into your life when you need them most. Rosa stood in that crowd, no longer a maid, but the director of community outreach, a position created specifically for her to help other struggling families. James and Julia, now 8 years old, healthy and thriving, stood with her. They had gone from searching through trash to helping distribute food at the company's monthly community dinners. They had gone from hiding in closets to playing in the company daycare with other employees' children. They had gone from having nothing to having everything that mattered. But the most important change was in Michael Chen, who had learned that the view from the 42nd floor meant nothing if you couldn't see the people on the ground. He had learned that paper angels made by children were worth more than stock options, that family dinners were better than business dinners, and that saving one family had saved him from a life of lonely success. Every Christmas Eve since, instead of standing alone in his office, he stood with Rosa and the twins at the community dinner they organized, serving hot meals to families who needed help, making sure no mother ever had to search through trash to feed her children again. The story of that Christmas Eve became more than just their story. It became a reminder that angels don't always come from heaven. Sometimes they come from the 42nd floor, and sometimes they come from the ground floor, and when they meet in the middle, lives change forever. Michael kept those paper napkin angels in a frame on his desk, a daily reminder that the best gifts come from those who have the least to give, and that true wealth is measured not in what you have, but in whom you help along the way.